Hello everyone. So let's talk about caching. Caching, it is a very important topic for system design because almost every system requires caching. So what is caching and why it is very powerful? So in order to store the data, we have database and we have a cache. So cache is a fast access memory. So we have a hard disk, okay? So hard disk also stores the data and RAM also stores the data. But RAM is able to retrieve it faster. So that is caching. And we have a limited caching power, right? So typically what happens is, so a call is made to the database, and if the database has the database returns the data. Okay. But what if there are 1,000 requests on the database? Or what if there are millions of requests on the database, right? So the database would be loaded and it won't be able to serve the request at that speed. But if the same data is with cache, so it will be able to do it 10 times faster. Okay. So that's where cache will be used. So typically we cache common things like profile picture, things like that, so that it doesn't have to hit the database. Okay. So it is basically temporary storage. So a new data comes and it gets deleted from the cache. Okay. So if I need to give an example to you, so suppose you have a piece of paper, okay, and you have a book, and you have to write an important piece of information. Suppose you are watching this lecture, and you take notes and you write that particular content in the book. Okay. So now if you have to find it, so you have to open the book, you have to locate the index, you have to, right, you have to look at the index label, and then you have to go to that page number, and then you have to look at that particular section, and then you'll get it. But if you have written it on the piece of paper and that piece of paper is in at your desktop only, so you just quickly look around it and you'll get it. So this is caching, and the data which you have put in book, that is the database. So now I think you got it. Okay. So I think my video is coming up in here. Okay. So let's talk about benefits of caching. Okay. So it it has speed obviously, and it can handle more number of users. Okay. So it has, like, if you have millions of users, and currently almost every system, every big system has that particular user base. Okay. So if we have proper caching, so then it is very easy to scale. Okay. And it is very efficient. Okay. Caching. And let's talk about some real world example of caching so that you would understand it better. Okay. So message retrieval, like in WhatsApp. So a message will be can be retrieved through cache, like it can be stored in cache. It doesn't have to hit the database. Like Instagram. So suppose if you are looking at the profile, user profile, or the bio of user. So typically those things are cached. So the page takes the time to load, but it returns the profile picture and the data about the user on the profile page, right? So if it calls the database, then you might experience slowness in loading the whole page, right? But instead, you are getting that information, which is typically if you are going to a profile, so you need that particular thing front, right? Similarly, in Amazon, product catalog, product pricing, they are all cached, so that you just see that particular thing, and rest all things are not loaded. Similarly, in Netflix home screen, right? You get a list of movies, thumbnails, and things like that. So it doesn't come from the database; it comes from the cache. So now an important question comes. So how these things are in cache? Like what if that particular product was not in cache? Okay, things like that. So if the data is found in cache, that is called cache hit. And if data is not found in cache, that is the cache miss. So we always need to keep a ratio of cache hit versus cache miss. Like if you're getting a lot of cache hit, means your cache strategy is very good. So the call is coming to the cache, means you are using the cache. But if there is a lot of cache miss, means the data needs to be retrieved from the database and it is not coming to the cache, so means you have to change something on the cache. Okay. So you have, in your design, you need to take care of these things as well. So as I was talking about earlier, like we keep the data temporarily only. So we have several parameters in the cache, like time to live. So how long the data should be there, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 24 hours. Okay. So depending on the system, we do the cache invalidation. We have different strategies to write data to cache, like write through, write behind strategies. So like if data is not there in the cache, so we load the data from the database and we write that new data to the database. So things like that. So we have different methods on that. Okay. And we have different kind of caching, like browser cache. Okay. So in order to deliver the static content of the web page, so browser loads like session storage or things like that. So browser kind of stores that particular information so that every time you don't need that particular thing. And you might have seen like a page, if you have visited a page or you are visiting a page frequently, so the next time that page loads faster. We have CDN, right? So CDN is supposed to deliver a static content like image, video content, right? So we have cache for CDN as well. Like we don't have to make a call to CDN every time. We have in-memory objects for the application. We have DB cache, which you might have heard about a lot. So there's a cache upfront for the DB, so that there are not a lot of DB calls happening. So that reduces load on DB and it improves the application performance as well. Okay, and then there is object store cache as well. So cache is everywhere, right? So there are different strategies like write through, update DB, and write cache together. So if like so there are different kind of strategies depending on how you want to use the cache. So in some cases you have database retrieval first, and then the new data will be updated to cache. So things like that. So you have to read about the caching strategies in depth. I'm not going to cover it in this video. And then there are a lot of tools in caching, like Redis. You might have heard about it. It is so popular and it is very fast. It has key value type of storage, so it is used very frequently in every kind of scenario. You have then there is Memcached as well, Vanish, AWS, and things like that. So every cloud provider also provides caching tool. Okay, but Redis is the most popular tool which is being used. Okay, so if you want a solution in your company as well, you can try Redis. It will improve your performance significantly. But it is not like that. Like you add cache and then performance starts improving. No, you have to have an architecture or design like where you need to put the cache, how you have to put the data into the cache, how you are going to retrieve it into the cache, what are the input sources, what is output sources. You have to think about that. Like it is not simply like you just added a cache and it will improve the performance. Okay. And when you should use caching, like when you have a lot of data that is repeated, like you have continuous same API calls, like a profile page is loaded continuously, so you can cache that particular thing, right? And suppose you have slow external dependency, you have expensive database queries, like some database queries take time. Suppose it takes 10 seconds to respond. So a user has to wait 10 seconds for the response, which is very bad because we don't want a customer to wait for 10 seconds because they might abandon the page. Okay. So we have to serve that fast. Okay. And suppose they are frequently accessed large data set. So they also take time. So we can cache that particular data so that it will be loaded in some milliseconds only, right? So you have to think of that like which things you have to cache and what type of caching and where you need to place cache. Cache is so powerful. You read about it, understand how it is used in different scenarios, and you'll be very good to go. And when you have to not use, like suppose when there are real-time updates in the data. So if you use cache, so you will be using updating in cache as well, and you need real-time data as well. So there it is not good. Like in that case, you can use some asynchronous operation like Kafka and things like that. And like the data that is changed very often, like account balance. So if you cache it, so you have to take continuously pulling from the database. So in that case, caching might not be good, right? So caching should be used where availability is needed instead of consistency. Okay. And so as you know, like it improves performance and you need to know where you need to apply. Okay. You need to read about it. You need to understand different systems. You can go over and read about different systems like Uber, Amazon, YouTube, Netflix, how they are handling caching. Different system has different way of handling cache. Okay. It is not like that every system handles it similar way. Every system has a different way of handling cache. So, and then once you get an idea of it, you can apply that on the real system design, real architecture, and it will help you a lot in your project. Okay. So read caching, understand it better. It will make you a good engineer.